in many respects. Well, here is a version of the story from here's a bit of it. The Nigerian Federal into the NFIU, depending on the gravity of the situation. On Thursday, the NFIU CEO, Modib Tura, said the ban was necessary to curb the rate at which money is withdrawn from accounts, flagrant disregard to the money laundering laws and sometimes for corruption purposes. He noted the decision was in sync with the full Nigeria into a cashless economy, which the Central Bank of Nigeria has been leading. Now, Tura said all financial institutions have been instructed to stop cash withdrawals from government accounts from March 1, 2023, adding that any government official who flouts the order will be prosecuted alongside his or her accomplices. Also, a similar version of the story published by Premium Times is captioned thus: over 1 trillion naira cash withdrawn from government accounts since 2015, NFIU says, and announces a ban. The NFIU announced a deadline for cash withdrawals from accounts of the federal, state and local government and all their ministries and departments, agencies. The agency said over 1 trillion naira in cash was withdrawn from government accounts, federal, state and local government between 2015 and 2022. This is what we're discussing next, and I'm asking you, will the NFIU's ban on cash withdrawals from government accounts greatly or significantly limit corruption in government? Join the conversation. We're live on facebook.com/Nigeria InfoPH. We're live on Twitter at Nigeria InfoPH. At the appropriate time, call 0700 923 0923. Well, joining me via phone for this conversation as well is Henry Ekine. He's National Legal Advisor with the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights. Henry, good evening. Happy New Year to you. Welcome to Hard Facts.
Dayo, Happy New Year. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great. And even though your holiday is not entirely over, when we spoke earlier today, you indicated that. Thank you for coming out of holiday for this interview.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for providing a platform. I appreciate it.
Let's get right to it then. First, and possibly the most significant question I will ask in the course of this interview, does the NFIU have the powers to issue such a ban?
The NFIU, I have come to understand, has wide powers that may reasonably justify that kind of regulation pursuant to the directive of the Central Bank of Nigeria, and of course being an agency of a watchdog character in the financial sector in this country. Arguably so, Dayo.
You do realize that this suggests strongly that the NFIU or the CBN for that matter, because you mentioned the CBN, and even the story I read out except from just a while ago, referenced the CBN as well. From the NFIU's comments, or the NFIU officials' comments also reference the CBN. Does this suggest that the NFIU or the CBN or any federal government agency or the federal government by implication or by extension can legislate or can determine how state governments or local governments run their affairs, especially their finances?
Yes, Dayo. We're on a federal system. The question you have asked appears to be one that, if so critically examined, we seem as if the NFIU or the CBN can regulate the financial activities of states and local government in that wide spectrum. No. Where the central bank has a statutory function and responsibility vested in the Central Bank of Nigeria, which is anything monetary policy. And the monetary policy in this country covers the field, whether it is a federal government or a state government or a local government or anybody in the private sector or even any foreign investor or any foreign government dealing in Nigeria or having any connection in financial dealings in Nigeria. It is only the central bank that has the statutory power to make monetary policy regulations and to also give such directives. So if the central bank gives any directive in respect to monetary policies, it covers the entire field, right? It is not the kind of exclusive argument of a state government saying, no, it's our finances, the fund belongs to a state government. Monetary matters are exclusive. Financial issues, to the extent that the central bank has the power to make monetary policies, are exclusive to the central bank, and there's only one in any country. So if the central bank has made that kind of threshold for anybody or any institution or agency of government in this country, whether a state government is expected to comply. So now where the FIU comes in as a regulatory agency or some form of an enforcing agency in the financial sector, also having powers to enforce the legitimate policies of the central bank, then the NFIU can give that kind of directive. It is not the kind of directive to the state government as to how to legislate on funds that belong to the state government, which is the statutory or constitutional function of the State House of Assembly. It is not that kind. Monetary policy can be made by a state agency or a state assembly.
Even as far as monetary policy, I'd like to reference NSB. I'd like to reference the comment of the NFIU that is with the full transition of Nigeria into a cash economy. Central Bank Nigeria has been leading. So that's it. I mean, just my understanding, that is the only connection to the CBN in all of it. It's not like the CBN itself issuing the directive to state governments or even the federal or any government for that matter or any department of government. CBN's policy is basically trying to establish a cash policy. Hence, the withdrawal limit said recently. The FIU, on the other hand, is the one that's maybe somewhat united, is coming up with this ban on cash withdrawals. A government at every level agent. So now, once again, CBN announced CBN withdrawal limit policy stated expressly that individuals withdraw a certain amount weekly. Organization can withdraw certain amounts weekly, daily, and weekly as well. Specific reference to governments or ministries, departments, and agencies of government, or is government regarded as an organization in this respect?
Yes, indeed. And beyond what could be seen on the face of it, the information available to NFIU, and then the statutory functions and power of the NFIU, and also the enabling act that established the NFIU. The NFIU has extended powers to enforce monetary policy appropriately made by the CBN. And let me draw this NFIU come on specific order, not the regulations, responsible to know themselves, based on those laws labeled. The NFIU has then for that direction to give effect to the whole monetary policy of the CBN, and then to also effect the policy of the CBN. And more important, the NFIU is very strategic when it comes to security and intelligence in the financial intelligence, only for domestic but for international use. There is a global financial intelligence unit collaboration of similar agencies, that is financial intelligence units across the world. So the NFIU is the only statutory agency within Nigeria that has the power to trace and track any fund household, including funds of state government and local government that allegedly are laundered. So you could see that, and for the preventive objective, the NFIU can make legitimate and reasonable directives to prevent money laundering, whether it is state government money or local government money or federal government money. If the directive is legitimate and derivable from the powers and functions of the NFIU pursuant to the Establishing Act, then it's justifiable. If anybody feels that there is something otherwise, then maybe the person could contest that in the course to give wider interpretation to the limits and the scope of the functions and powers of the NFIU. So
this ban or this regulation issued by the NFIU can be challenged in court?
Of course, any administrative action can be challenged in court, either directly as an action in court or as some order of in administrative law, whether it's statutory to check the administrative functions of agencies of government, or in some other other form, if you think that the action of an agency of government is unconstitutional and it's in contravention with any provision of the Constitution, then you can challenge that directly in the High Court. And I think there's been a similar issue between the state governments under the platform of state governors, under the platforms of the Nigerian Governors Forum also, and the NFIU, where at some point they felt that NFIU had gone out of their constitutional mandate and their statutory mandate, and they went to court to challenge that. So if anybody feels aggrieved by the directive of the NFIU or any agency of government at that, it can be challenged in court.
All right. Now, still taken from the NFI's boss's comments, he said that any government official that withdraws cash from public accounts risks investigation from the EFCC, the ICPC, the Nigerian Police in collaboration with NFIU, depending on the gravity of the situation. Why the government official? What I mean is this: for example, some maybe low-level accountant or some clerical staff is given a directive by his DG or the head of some of government, or even a commissioner or a minister or even a governor or local government chairman, because this person is not the one in charge of the state's accounts. Obviously, that person must receive a directive from a superior to go do that. And like I said, in some cases, maybe even the governor. Why is the person who was simply sent on an errand to go make the withdrawal the one that will face investigation by the NFIU or other such relevant agency of government?
The only public officials in Nigeria under the immunity provision in the Constitution are the president, the vice president, the governor, and the deputy governor. Otherwise, any other public office holder or any official is liable to his conduct at the time it's carried out. And therefore, if a governor gives the directive to, say, an accountant general of a state and public fund is laundered, at the instance, really, is the accountant general and every other officer, right, at the moment, that will be investigated and, of course, prosecuted. That does not exonerate the governor, who at the time they had immunity. And that's why the cases are everywhere, where governors, after their tenure, they are usually being prosecuted. Now, it's not untrue that governors have stood trial on money laundering of public funds. So it's not like, so most of those funds you hear that governors are being prosecuted are probably actually even by their direction for some official of government to take the actual step to get it laundered. So the only thing is about some kind of suspension at the moment if the governor or the president or vice president or deputy governor is involved. But if it's a minister...
Henry Poundame, got a commercial break to attend to right now. We'll be back shortly. Conversation will continue. Please stay with us.
Nigeria Info. Right back after this.
Nigeria, now we country.
Welcome back to Hunt Back to Nigeria Info, your number one talk station. I'm Dai. NFIU bans cash withdrawals from government accounts. Is the conversation right now. My guest is Ekine, National Legal Advisor with the CDHR. Henry, you're welcome back.
Yes, Dai, thank you very much.
All right. So, from the response you gave earlier on, from the comments of the NFIU boss, that any official of government who initiates or carries out cash transactions or cash withdrawals in any bank from government accounts will be investigated. You said yes, it doesn't absolve the governor or any top government official that may have given that order or made the request for the subordinate to implement. Now that said, so what should this low-level accountant do then if a local government chairman, well, they don't have immunity. Let's say a governor, for example, who has immunity, orders him or her to go to a bank to go carry out some cash withdrawal transactions. What should that low-level accountant's response be?
You know that the responsible thing any public officer would do if a superior officer is in any way giving you a directive that is unlawful and unconstitutional, you refuse it. That's a lawful thing. That's a responsible and reasonable thing to do. It is not insubordination. Because you cannot argue insubordination if you are asking an individual to commit a crime or commit any violation to any extant law or abuse your office, extant regulations, abhorring that kind of conduct. That is not insubordination. But, and let me say again, what has happened in the public service. Before the public service became very subservient to political office holders, particularly, I would take here the relationship between a minister and a permanent secretary, or a commissioner and a permanent secretary. The permanent secretary remains the accounting officer of the ministry. And that is to say, it is the permanent secretary that is the signatory to the account of a ministry, when ministries were holding accounts. It is the permanent secretary that will give account of the funds or anything in any ministry. The politician appointed a commissioner or a minister was for policy implementation, either formulation and implementation. But when the politicians became more compelling on public public servants, particularly permanent secretaries and directors, then it changed. Now, you now find a situation where even the permanent secretary becomes like a servant to a commissioner or to a minister. That he could no longer stand his ground to say, Mr. Minister, you will live probably another 1 month or another 1 year, or perhaps at most in 4 years. But I remain here as the permanent secretary and perhaps even a director in the public service, and I'll have to account for everything that happens here. Then, if a minister comes to you or a commissioner comes and is giving you some direction that you know is against the public service rules, why would you compromise your employment? But the reality is not what I'm saying. The reality is that the commissioner is the boss and is the head. So even the permanent secretary is living on the mercy of the commissioner in terms, but then that's monetary interest. Because you cannot even unlawfully or unreasonably dismiss a public officer. In law, a public office employment, a public officer has statutory coverage. That employment has statutory flavor in such a way that if the dismissal is wrongful, it is actionable.
Henry.
But they are failed.
Henry, I must go for a break now. We've got the headlines coming up right now. And afterwards, this conversation will continue. Please stay with us. Hard Fact returns in a bit.
You are
Info. I'm Dyer. 27 to go before 6 p.m. That's 27 minutes before the major news comes up. However, my conversation with Henry Ekine, National Legal Advisor with CDHR, continues. Henry, you're welcome back.
Yes, Dyer.
NFIU bans cash withdrawals from government accounts, and that means all government accounts at the federal level, state level, local government levels as well, is what we're discussing at the moment. Join the conversation. We're live on facebook.com/NigeriaInfoPH. We're live on Twitter at NigeriaInfoPH as well. And appropriately or at the appropriate time, do call 0700 923 0923, which will be shortly, by the way. But Henry, before we get there, it's not uncommon. Or maybe I should rephrase that. It has been alleged severally that financial institutions such as deposit money banks and the rest of them are sometimes involved in illicit or illegal transactions such as money laundering and the rest of it. And it has been alleged severally as well that some of these financial institutions collude with individuals, even governments, government agencies, departments, in committing fraud or money laundering. How is the NFIU going to be able to keep a track on, cash transactions by governments or departments, ministries, and agencies of government? Hello, Henry, did you get the question? Henry, are you there? Henry? Hello, Henry, did you get my question? Henry? All right, I guess I may need to reconnect with my guest shortly. Stay tuned. Hard Facts returns in a bit.
Here on Info, we give you a great blend of all. Local
Yes, thank you. I heard your question.
Okay, all right, go ahead, please.
So my response is that that takes us back to the CBN policies with respect to threshold amounts for withdrawals. Now, the deposit money institutions, banks, and every level of financial institution has a responsibility. Every such has a responsibility to report to the financial regulators, the CBN and the NFIU, all transactions that are above this threshold. And that is how the NFIU track this. Though they have their own system of tracking, but these institutions, commercial institutions, have the responsibility to so report. Now, it's interesting to state here that the NFIU had said at some point that they had about 150 trillion naira worth of transactions that were reported as suspicious in just 3 months. That's the first quarter of 2022. And so that those who are listening can understand the importance of the NFIU or the FIU entirely in the global system in respect to tracking suspicious financial transactions and even currency transactions. So if the NFIU has this receipt of this kind of reports on them, it can justify why they can make this kind of regulations and policies. But directly to your question, the NFIU tracks independently on its own because it's an independent agency of government, only domiciled in CBN. Then the commercial banks have responsibility to give reports of certain financial financial transactions, including transactions that exceed the threshold or any suspicious financial transaction or currency transaction by anybody, including government, any agency of government, to the central bank and to the NFIU.
Now, to another situation that may be a challenge to this, I'd like for you to weigh in on it, and that is, let's take the Rivers State situation, for example, and I'm referring to the perpetual injunction of that's secured by a past governor of Rivers State, which many have argued as top on the list of that, by the way, is the Rivers State government, that insisting that that perpetual injunction precludes any agency of government or financial agency or financial investigating agency of government, the EFCC, ICPC, or any other such agency, that it precludes them from being able to investigate any financial activities of the Rivers State government. Of course, the EFCC and others have said quite a lot about that in recent and not so recent times. For example, it was alleged not too long ago that the Rivers State government carried out financial transactions of withdrawals to the tune of about 117 billion naira. And in spite of attempts by the EFCC, one might question how sincere those attempts are anyways, but that's a different matter for another conversation. In spite of attempts by the EFCC to successfully investigate this allegation, nothing seems to have come out of it. Even arrests have not been made. We're not aware anybody's been questioned on the matter. Assuming, I'm not suggesting that it will happen, assuming that this any such financial transaction or cash transaction takes place in Rivers State, how is the NFIU or any other agency, the ICPC or EFCC, as stated by the NFIU boss, going to be able to investigate this or take appropriate steps, considering that this much talked about controversial perpetual injunction is still very much in play?
Yes, Adayo, I've taken time to misrepresented purported action in that the first time in the big domas and the record I would have given the understanding person. I looked at about 4 cases that were connected to that injunction, even with the orderlies and then River State. It is not that any agency of government of the only federation I maintain that has an act of the National Assembly. An act of the National Assembly, even in an area where a state House of Assembly has the power to legislate. If there is any conflict, that of the National Assembly takes precedence. So, particularly, whatever injunction is referred to here is in respect to the EFCC, and then in respect to an individual. And also, even where it is River State government, in respect to the functions of the House of Assembly of River State. I have the details of all of those cases and even the decisions of those courts. It does not preclude, for instance, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission to prevail or go against any public officer. Let any public officer of River State government think that there is an injunction by one orderly or even the River State government restraining the AFCC from investigating the public funds of River State. Then as a public officer, you commit an infraction of the public service rules, or you commit an infraction against the ICPC Act, and the ICPC cannot come against you, and then you think you just flag that injunction that you're not a party or a party to. It's not true, and that's why the ICPC recently was even inviting the immediate past Accountant General of River State. It's appropriate. If he feels that they don't have the power, then he should go to court and seek his own injunction. He will not rely on the injunction of another person.
Yes, Henry, pardon my interjection. Yes, the CPC may offer invitations, as the EFCC has done severally as well, and the NFIU might decide to even take a cue from them and extend invitations also. But all of these invitations have to nothing.
No, that's what I want to make. There is a dictatorial enforcement of legal reviews and the cold maneuvers. They all live in the political maneuver and deliberate turning the idea by even agents of men. That's what I mean. It's what they did to carry citizens cars. Even the EFCC would take it out anywhere. Even the airport, section of guarding of political support that would have to be infrared in the air, or anywhere they had to, in bill was that. So we understand that, but analysis is pure law. The EFCC stand, and I maintain that I've done short videos on, and I think also supported with legal justice. One should do. They can arrest any uncertain, but it's only function. A viable and competent agency to enforce the law. Okay, let me come. I mean, why not we try it and let it determine that it's an injunction that was granted to people against the EFC. And I think what the issue really were by state government and EFC, the EFC technically taking the functions of the assembly of it. In what this action was there, other cases, the fear of that the EFC even went to court to ask the court to interpret judgments to earlier judgments. That in the event that court said the EFC does not have the power of the assembly, if the legislature comes and says, go ahead and go and steal the government money and go away, I find them those cash costs. I didn't do it.
The lines open right now, 0933. We're live at facebook.com/Nigeria Info PH. We'll your pitch, get your take on the comments for the TS Goka via Twitter at Anna Label. We are in a country where the systems work that will definitely reduce corruption. Talking about reducing corruption, Henry, how exactly will this curb corruption in government?
Well, the focus of the NFIU, the responsibility of the NFIU is to creative measures of funding and then of course laundering of funds. So and then of course the missions as to how much money you can probably withdraw over the counter and establish threshold of can be individual or agents of government. Now, but on the side of the IP the regulations rule of carrying active as currency from one to another. It also is if you to not only that much, but on the electronic class. What all contracts are everywhere you know, or any procurement do legitimately, and then the procurement process goes through the public procurement bureau, and then if the bank it's easy to another responsibility of NFIU is to trace and track the movement of funds and funds. And every other agency that is responsible to in this regard, the CPC and the of it. But not even to companies and of office, manipulating process with the officials back and get that organizations, companies, and individuals must access some amount of money that
You're welcome, please go on. 0700 923 0923. Also, we're live on Twitter at Nigeria Info PH. Hello, hard fact, welcome. Hello? If you indeed do have a comment or contribution you'd like to make to the conversation or a question, I'd like to hear from you. Do call 0700 923 0923 or join via facebook.com/Nigeria Info PH. Also via Twitter at Nigeria Info PH. Do drop your comment or your question there. We'll get to them as soon as possible. All right, Neri. So, in the event that there is, like you said just a while ago, maybe even you referenced, you talked about collusion between financial institutions and persons in government. For example, not just persons in government, financial institutions have been alleged to collude with private individuals or private organizations as well to launder money and all kinds of other nefarious activities, especially of the financial kind. If this does happen, and that's what I'm talking about here, in the event that it does happen, we've had the allegation of 117 billion naira, a while back, involving the River State government. If it does happen that going forward, we have another scenario where billions are withdrawn, because even before now, I'm sure we had some of these procedures in place where if withdrawals exceed a particular threshold, inform somebody. Very likely nobody was informed at that time. What do you envisage will happen?
What will happen to who?
The president responsible, the government responsible, as it were.
Let's take the money laundering prohibition act.
We have just a minute for this, Henry. Just a minute.
Okay then.
No, I mean you have just 1 minute.
Okay, yes. That's why I take the money laundering act, for instance. It has provisions for punishment for infraction of the provisions of the money laundering prohibition act. The same in terrorism provision act. if the NFIU or any agency trace or track any fund to terrorism financing or for money laundering, there's punishment already. And then, like I said, these agencies of government have the statutory power to investigate, to prosecute, and to punish. Anybody, apart from the governor and deputy governor and president and vice president, at the time they are in office, as they leave office, they can still prosecute them, and they can investigate them while in office. So a governor can be investigated while in office, and then he keeps his file. Immediately after his exit from office, he prosecutes him.
I guess we'll have to wait and see how this goes then and the implementation of this regulation. Thanks for joining in. Especially thanks to my guest. Ekine is a lawyer, national legal advisor with the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights. Henry, many thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dayo. I quite appreciate it.
Commercial break comes up now. The major news report at 6 p.m. A review of all the matters discussed on the show today afterwards. Do please stay with us.
For more talk